Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I'm so excited to introduce you to Beth Sandlin, who is the owner of Trifecta Pilates in the Denver area. And I brought her on today because she has just a wealth of knowledge beyond just, Pilates in the physical sense, but she has the whole kind of like mind-body connection thing going on. She's all about living mindfully in the moment. And so, Beth, tell us, just to start, I know this is such a broad topic. And so maybe you could actually help us figure out, where do we start with this? Because we're talking to moms of teens and tweens who are all busy, exhausted, we're tired, we're kind of running that rat race. And what is like your best advice on just getting present in the moment?
I think it's starting to get comfortable with finding the hidden opportunities for a pause. And the pause doesn't mean that the rest of the day we're going to do nothing and go to the spa all day. But what are the areas in between? If you're working full time like I am and a mom or a parent, then that has its own additional challenges. But for stay-at-home moms and parents who I know, they're still juggling a lot. And what happens is I get a sense that it's just like this constant go, go, go. Wake up, get kids off to school, think about the activities that we're taking them to that week, how we're going to juggle all of those responsibilities. And it doesn't seem like there's ever an opportunity just to acknowledge what just happened and, yes, where we're going next. So I would say just even taking a moment when you drop the kids off at school, that's a deep breath and a pause. When you finish doing the dishes, that's a deep breath and pause. That can be really helpful to start tuning in to your energy. And you had mentioned, that we just kind of are drained with energy sometimes. I felt that that's a really great way so that we don't get to that exhausted state at the end of the day.
Yes. Okay. I'm really enjoying the idea of just the pause, because I think what we probably typically do is the opposite of that, which is just immediately go to the next activity or the next thing. And we don't take that moment to, exactly as you're saying, just like pause, allow yourself to connect with your own body and just kind of figure out where you're at. And maybe even, I'm sure you teach this as well, like, what is it that you're needing right now, right? Because I bet once you get really good at it, you start to kind of notice that. Is that, I see you nodding. So what are your thoughts on that?
100%. And especially when we layer on moving, whether it's with Pilates or workouts in general, this is something that has not traditionally been taught. It's go in for your hour-long workout. It's always going to be challenging in nature. And yet we know from both a physical perspective and just also our nervous system hygiene that more challenging full-length workout isn't always going to be helpful, especially if we are in a period where we're doing more. For instance, right now, my kids are back into school, so it's a time for not only my work and my workout routine, but I'm volunteering with the kids' activities more, and my weekends are more full than they were during the summer. And so this is going to impact what's going to be most beneficial for something that's sustainable, and it takes off, I would say it takes off workouts from, oh, I have to do that, or I really should do it, to this is really benefiting me more than just like getting in a good workout. We know that's healthy for our body and all the benefits. This is actually helping me be a better parent.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. Man, that's, if only we could get everybody to kind of realize that taking that step back and, doing that self-care and things like that can really help benefit you in just not just yourself, but your whole entire family. So I want to hear more about Pilates. Like, how did you get into it? Why are you passionate about it? And how did you get to own a studio? I know that's a lot all in there, but there's got to be a big story behind that.
There is, and it's been about a 20-year journey. I've been teaching for over 20 years now. And before that, I just started Pilates because I wanted to try a new type of workout. I had been going to the gym, and about a year prior, before I got into Pilates, was actually diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, wow.
And so my cancer journey was, and still is, one of the reasons why I really like to have a consistent workout routine, because I know how it feels not to feel good, not to be able to be there for not only myself, but my family. And what happened is, over the years, Pilates, I've done many iterations, from working in a traditional Pilates studio to having it a little bit more part-time and working on a university campus as a health educator and teaching Pilates mat classes. And I realized that for me, my path was not necessarily opening up a brick and mortar Pilates studio. So even though I'm located in Colorado, I focus all on online offerings. And one of the reasons why is I'm a mom. And whether it was I was working part-time in the Pilates studio, my kiddos were teeny tiny, or my kids got older and I was working full-time, that I always had the most consistent Pilates practice from my very own home. And I think that was my hesitancy to open up the traditional brick and mortar model, is that's not where I've ever been successful doing Pilates. Because sure, I can do a full length class at home, but many times, like today, it's going to be a 30-minute Pilates session, because that's what fits in for my day, and that's what's going to be most beneficial. So that's kind of the trajectory of how I got started in Pilates and where I am right now.
That's great. I love it. Anything you can do at home that it just makes life easier. You don't have to drive somewhere. So that's awesome. So how does Pilates help a mom maintain energy? Because I know that that is like probably the core foundation of what a mom needs is energy. So how does that help?
I think that when we tune into that energy perspective, it one takes the pressure off of workouts, which is amazing. And it gives a mom great opportunity to evaluate, well, is it that full length class that's going to be helpful, or something shorter? Is it something that's going to boost energy or to recharge you? And what I mean by that is, if a workout is faster and more challenging, that hopefully is boosting your energy. Then there's Pilates classes that are going to be a little bit more slower in pace, maybe working on refining how you move. And for a lot of people who move with those types of classes, we call those restorative or connect style classes at Trifecta Pilates. It actually is a space where they feel like they have more energy after they leave the mat and then are recharging, because the workout isn't, I don't want to use the word depleting. What I'm going to say is, it doesn't use the same amount of energy as a higher intensity workout. And
Mhm.
so if we're considering that during our week or weeks, we're in a phase where there's a lot of energy expenditure because we're managing new schedules, we're, volunteering, we're taking our kids to different activities, then it may not make sense, especially if we're starting a new routine, to go right away into the higher, more vigorous workout. It could
Mhm.
be more beneficial to ease into it from a time perspective and the style of Pilates class you're taking. And
Mm.
that in that way, I found a lot of moms have seen that they're more consistent with workouts, rather than trying one full length, high intensity workout and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm just so tired the next day.
Yeah.
It's too much. And then not working out for a long period of time. And if we just turn that back a little bit and tune into different ways to move, it becomes more motivating to do so.
Yes, I love that because it's all about, again, tuning into your body and what do you need, what would be helpful right now, and kind of going with what your body's telling you. That's awesome. And so, can you tell us about your philosophy of aligned action? Kind of explain what that is and tell us about it.
Aligned action is really taking the opportunity to center yourself in the present. And this means not reflecting back 5 or 10 years ago with what worked really well for your workout routine, and not going so far forward that it's like, well, when I have time, I'm going to start working out. Or if I had the perfect day, then I'd be able to fit in workouts. It's, what is your reality at this present moment? And just taking time to sit with that and accept it. And for so many moms, I know it's, we are here so much for our children. And we also need to be here for us, because when we fill our own cup by taking aligned action, it actually helps the family dynamics overall. And so aligned action could be that you're going to get to bed on time and get off social media. Now, if you're a night owl like me, that may be a challenging element to focus
Mhm.
on. Or perhaps it's starting with a 5-minute workout, because what you want to focus on is having that routine be more consistent and not going into, I think, too far too deep is what it is. And then we just have this self-fulfilling prophecy of, oh, you know what, I can't work out. It doesn't work out well for me at this point. And I used to always think that I could not work out, even though I've been moving with Pilates for 20 years. In like, if I turn back the clock in middle school, high school, I was like, I don't work out. This isn't for me. But what's beautiful now is that we know there's so many different opportunities in which we can move to take aligned action. Perhaps it's working out at home with Pilates, or you want to try a dance class again because you really liked that as a child and you want to get out of the house a little bit. So there's so many opportunities, and what can be helpful is just focus on what lights you up, what's exciting, and how to do that in a way that makes sense for you and your family.
I like what you said about that, because so many times it's like we have this checklist in our brains or a goal to work out. And so then it almost becomes this like negative chore, something you have to like check off the list. But instead it's like, what's fun? What feels good? What do you like? What do you enjoy? And that way you almost, it's like you want to do it instead of kind of like being forced to do it. So that sounds, much more exciting for me and much more enjoyable. So what advice would you give a mom who is just starting Pilates, who's never tried it before? And what are some common obstacles?
Some common obstacles are definitely the time, lack of time. How am I going to fit this into my schedule? Feeling like you have to do the most challenging exercises for it to be beneficial as well. And if you work out at home, I would say setting boundaries with your family. So I'll address all of these. For setting boundaries with your family, a strategy that I've used with my family, from teenagers to even husband, is before I go down to work out, I'm going to work out. Do you need anything from me? So if they're in the home, I'm letting them know this is my time. And they have learned over time, if they walk down those basement stairs and they ask me a question, if it's not an emergency, I'll come talk to you afterwards. And so I
Yeah.
have to recommit to that. And it's something so simple, but I think that our children are so used to having instant access to us all the time. And
Yeah.
not only is that helpful for myself to set those boundaries, but they also know, oh, they have to plan sometimes. I'm not just going to drop my workout routine because they have a question about homework. Now, of course, I have stepped off the mat for emergencies. Like, there are always going to be exceptions.
Yeah.
The next is start with workouts that are far easier than you think that you can do. This reminded me of, I went to a class once with someone who hadn't worked out in a few years, and afterwards she goes, "That seemed like it should be so easy, but it was actually so hard." So even if we are moving throughout the day, if we haven't worked out in a long time, it's going to take some time and some practice to get that back in our body. And I have definitely stepped on the mat and done a workout where the next day it's like, oh man, I'm really sore. I don't feel like moving at all. And what I realized is, when I did that in my past, that it didn't actually help motivate me to work out that day or the following day. So if we turn down that dial of intensity and the workout seems easy at first, that's
Mhm.
okay, because we're just starting and establishing a routine. We'll get that intensity over time. And then number 3 would be start short. I mentioned 5 minutes. Maybe you want to do 10, maybe you want to do 15, but don't feel like you have to even do 30 minutes. And at the very beginning, I talked about the pause. What I realized is sometimes I was trying to squeeze in workouts so much into my schedule. I was like rushing downstairs to the basement and then rushing back upstairs to do work and then rushing to go volunteer, that actually wasn't helpful for my nervous system. It did not feel good. And so I made a choice If I have to shorten the workout by 5 or 10 minutes and I can have more pause, that's actually going to be so much more beneficial and more motivating to continue to work out. So those are the three elements. Set boundaries, start with something maybe easier than you think you should, and start with shorter classes.
Yeah, those are all great. That's such great advice. But the third one for sure, I wouldn't have necessarily thought of. But that's great. Like, right? It's like you're gonna get a better workout and you're gonna be more engaged and excited and in the moment if you just take that moment to do the pause, and then you'll be more engaged. Okay, I love it. So, what about moms who are in different stages of life? Like there's, the new mom, there's you and I are kind of in the same stage of life with like the teenagers. And then there's, the kind of left the nest. So how can Pilates help all ages?
I think it's a time to center ourselves as a person when we're coming to the mat. And sometimes that means when our kiddos were little, maybe it was them playing alongside next to us. And yes, they're going to crawl on us like when my kids were teeny tiny. That was a reality. And at first, sometimes I would get really frustrated with that. Like, I just need alone time. And what I realized is that was not helpful because I wanted my kids. I wanted to be there for them. And being more adaptable for myself is also good role modeling to them. That
Mm,
yes, even though now I'm at a life stage where I'm going down to work out, I'm setting a boundary, a teenager is much different than my 2 year old when they were 2 years old. So I think being open to those fluctuations is really helpful. And when we set goals, maybe it's I want to work out 5 days a week, knowing that we have other responsibilities. So if we have to merge workouts, which is something we can do, maybe you're used to doing shorter 20-minute classes, and on Friday, you know that it's just not going to be helpful for you to do that workout. You can merge it on a Thursday, and it's always okay to skip a workout. This is something I don't feel like we talk about enough, and there's a lot of new how do I want to frame this? There's a lot of toxicity when it comes to consistency with workouts. Consistent doesn't mean constant. And especially with some apps, it's you track your workout and people get so obsessed with having a check mark every day. Like I heard on the podcast recently, someone literally started doing a spin class at midnight.
oh my.
Now, that's not beneficial for our overall health. That's prioritizing workouts to the extreme. A
Mhm.
healthy lifestyle, workouts is just one small part of it. It should not be all consuming. And I don't want you working out a spin class at 12 o'clock at night. If you have insomnia, maybe you do a little bit of movements to try to, relax a little bit more. But I'm never going to advocate that you have to have all the check marks for every single day of the week. Being more adaptable is the number one way in which we can be more consistent and have a sustainable workout program that feels motivating and lights us up rather than like we have to do this.
Yeah. And I think you did end up nailing the perfect word, which is toxicity. Sometimes it's like we're working so hard to be good and feel good that it becomes our identity. And if we kind of fail at that goal, we almost like have that shame and blame and guilt. And so I imagine that's what people are trying to avoid by getting all those check marks, right? They want to feel good, but you're kind of like busting that myth wide open and say it doesn't have to be that way. You can kind of change your view on how these things happen and be sensible about it. Don't go work out at midnight. It doesn't make any sense. So I love it. All right, this has been great. And what else what else have we not covered? Because I know there's so much to this and it's kind of hard to like nail it all down. So what do you feel like we haven't talked about yet?
I would say being curious. Curiosity is something that most of us instill in our children, and that courage to explore new elements and new activities. I don't know about you, but with my kids, like they tried baseball and soccer and all these different activities, and it took them a really long time to kind of figure out what they enjoyed. And even with that there was a learning curve. And if they didn't enjoy, their softball right away, it wasn't, I'm going to pull you out of that. We're going to try something else. And I feel like that happens a lot when we turn into adults, that all of a sudden we don't give ourselves the time or the compassion just to stick with it and learn and enjoy that process, let it unfold. So I always say, when you start something new, give it at least 3 chances. Unless you really don't like it, the first time most likely is going to be the most awkward, because you have no idea who the teacher is or what's going to be coming your way. But guess what? You come back the second time, especially if you move with the same exact class because you work out at home, so you press play on the same workout, it's going to feel more familiar. And then that third class is a good litmus test, like, is this something I want to continue with? So at least give it some time and just speak to yourself as kindly as you speak to your children.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. I love that. So I think that's so great to just give something a chance, be curious, even do the same workout twice so you can see how it feels the second time or the third time versus the first time. So that's awesome. Okay, last question. I need to come back to a term I've never heard that I heard you say, which is nervous system hygiene. I have never heard it put that way. So tell me about that.
Well, I actually just came up with the hygiene part while we were having this conversation. But why I used it was because we talk about the nervous system, and I'm speaking specifically about the autonomic nervous system. There's the sympathetic, which is, yes, it has fight or flight mechanism, but also with workouts and energizing and emergency. So we use that a lot. And then there's the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, more soothing. In some ways, there's another gear to that, which can lead to detachment, which hopefully we're keeping things positive, social connections with ourselves or others. And so when I spoke about nervous system hygiene, it's, what does your nervous system need in the present? Back to that aligned action. So if our life is really busy, it's filled with a to-do list, and we're going from activity to activity, most likely we're stuck in a sympathetic nervous system response. Just go and go, which actually doesn't allow us time to tune in and what does our body need. So it goes back to just even taking a moment to pause can help us identify with that. And we use that information to what makes sense for our food intake, for sleep, for stress reduction, for workouts. And all of these elements are like a soup, for lack of better words, or stew, where they all mingle together. When we're making a soup, it's very hard to parse out what is, the ingredient. There may be a star ingredient, like if you have making a potato leek soup, potatoes and leeks, but it's not just potatoes and leeks in there that make the soup. It comes all together. And most likely your potato leek soup recipe, if you have that, it might be a little bit different than mine, because you found what works well for you. So back to nervous system hygiene, it's knowing, when does it make sense to ramp up the energy and focus on workouts? When does it not? So as an example, I found that Mondays generally are really great days for me to do more challenging workouts, because the weekends I have had more time to rest and relax compared to Monday through Friday. Wednesday, it's like, okay, we're midweek, but I'm a little bit more tired from everything going on. So I don't pair my higher energy workouts on those days. Well, that's generally what worked well for me. But I was sitting right here in my office chair one Monday and thinking, I am not motivated to work out today. What is going on? Like, I've been so consistent. And I had this light bulb moment. Oh my goodness. For the past 3 months, my weekends have not been like relaxing.
Yeah.
And on Saturdays with one child at their activities, on Sundays at volleyball tournaments all day for their activities. And so I was going into the week not with that rest that I usually was. So instead of just saying, I'm just not going to work out today, no, what would be beneficial for me? Because I know that movement feels good. I leave the day feeling like I have more energy. So I decided to do something much more restorative and slow for my Pilates class. felt better in my body, and was more motivated to work out the next day. So that's really what I'm talking about with nervous system hygiene, is that we may get into a rhythm or cadence that really feels good. But what happens as parents, this can change and shift dramatically because we have other people relying on us. And I'm a firm believer that Pilates is always going to be here for you, especially the full length classes. And if it makes sense to scale back, because that's what's beneficial from a time perspective or your nervous system, celebrate and move with that.
That's so great. I love it. It was such a great description of that. The nervous system hygiene, it's like, I thought of like flossing your brain, but it's really like flossing your body, but really like saying, what do I need? How do I need it? What feels good? And wonderful. Okay. So how do people find you online?
It's really easy, trifectapilates.com for the website, or you can join me on YouTube as well at Trifecta Pilates.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, I'm definitely going to hop on and join one of your classes. I'm so excited. And I really enjoyed the conversation today. So thank you so much.
And thank you as well.
Okay. Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.